My friends, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of Diner Talks with James. I'm James, and I'm super pumped to be here with you all today. How we doing, my friends? Slide into the booth. What can we get you at the diner? You want a hot chocolate? You want some whipped cream on top of that hot chocolate? I bet you do. You look fancy. You're a fancy person, aren't you? That's fine. Get into it. I'm here for it, friends. It's also hot chocolate season, which I'm excited about. I'm not a coffee drinker. A lot of people like coffee. I don't like coffee. People think that's weird about me. But as you can tell, I'm naturally obnoxious. I don't need more caffeine, y'all. I woke up like this. So anyway, I'm super pumped to hang out with you in the diner today. We have Desi Garcia coming out and hanging out with us. I've met her via Instagram, but we've never really met in person. So I'm really excited to get to know her because she does some incredible work. Let me tell you a little bit about Desi. Desi Garcia is a mom, a wife, a survivor, an advocate, counselor, crisis worker, trauma expert, podcaster, and public speaker. She is the founder of Candle in a Dark Room. She's a survivor of child physical and sexual abuse. And Candle in a Dark Room is an incredible organization. They offer many things. They help survivors, of physical and sexual trauma, as well as mental health that stems from trauma. They also help other traumas such as grief, adoption, and more. Desi goes into court with victims around the country to face their perpetrators and help them prepare before, support them during and after and for the whole long term. She is an incredible individual. She helps survivors take the power back and take the proper steps in healing their trauma. I'm really excited to work with Desi today and get to know her more and have you get to know her as well. So let's bring her out right now. This badass woman. What's going on, Desi? How are you today?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited that you wanted to be had.
Yes.
Thanks for reaching out and connecting with me on Instagram, and
Yes.
I'm so pumped that we're connected today.
Me too. I'm so glad. I love all your stuff that you always post and all your stuff that you think you're hilarious. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, fam. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Desi, this show is called Diner Talks with James. And so we got to start it off proper. I'm wondering, late at night, do you have any late night guilty eating pleasures? Now, I know you're based in Salt Lake, so I don't think the diner game is strong out there, but maybe we got IHOPs, maybe we got Denny's, maybe there's something else out there that you're doing that I'm Cafe Rio, maybe that's open up late. What's your late night move?
Ooh, we don't have a ton of diners here. We have a few, but like nothing like some of those other states have around us. I wish we'd had more because I love diners. But I would probably the thing that people do when they like go out and we're drinking and things like that, we like to hit up what's called Betos, which is like a rancheritos. It's like a Mexican quick food Mexican place, and they have like
Mhm.
carne asada nachos and things like that. So when I've like gone out with my friends and I'm ready to come home and crash, I would love to get those nachos from there. So that's probably my guilty pleasure.
Desi, I am ashamed to say this because it means I'm not hanging out with the right people, but you are the first person who says they do nachos late at night. And I think that's a great move.
That's so funny. It's not often, but I mean, I don't do much very often at night. But when I do, that's definitely a go-to. You can't go wrong with nachos, especially carne asada ones. They're amazing.
Carne
So,
asada is so good. And Betos,
right?
that's a spot in Salt, and you're in Salt Lake, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great town, underrated town. A lot of people are confused by Utah, and for some reasons I understand, but for the most part, you got to get out there and meet the people.
It is. It's actually, and it's changed so much the dynamic over here since, just since last at least several years. It's a
Mhm.
lot different than when I grew up. It was very more sheltered and, a lot of the LDS community and things like that. When people think Utah, Salt Lake, they think, the LDS, the Mormons, all that, which they are here. But honestly, I feel like nowadays there's more non-Mormons than there are Mormons in Utah. So
Mhm.
it's definitely changed. And I love Utah for, many different reasons. I hate the snow, so that's one thing I don't like. But I'm
Certainly there.
definitely in the wrong state for that because, Utah is known for their snowboarding and skiing and all that. But
Mhm.
I love Utah, at least where I live. I feel like it's a pretty safe like place to be. Not grew up, excuse me. I lived in Albuquerque for a year when I was 17 because I don't know. I just after I got out of rehab, I thought it would be cool. So I decided to move there by myself at 17, and that was interesting. And that is a whole other life out there, let's just say, in Albuquerque. So it made me appreciate Salt Lake so much more because I didn't realize how sheltered I was, that I hadn't
Mm.
seen like I mean, again, where I live, I don't see people like doing drugs and doing things like that. And like in Albuquerque, it's just right there in front of you all the time. And so it's definitely weird. We do have obviously the stricter like laws with alcohol, which can sometimes be frustrating, but other times it's kind of nice because we don't have to. I feel like it's not as you don't have to worry about as much of like DUIs and like those type of you know what I mean
Yeah,
things with
sure.
like my
Yeah.
kids. So it has its pros and cons, but for the most part, I do like Utah.
I hear that. I hear that. Yeah, I've never had a bad time in Salt Lake. One of my favorite restaurants in the country, a place called the Copper Onion.
Ooh,
Um,
that's a good. Yep, that's a
is
great one. They have
is
their burgers are fire.
strong
Yes.
burgers out there for
Yep.
sure. I'll do anything for a good burger, Desi. You can write that down. Um, I well, I love that. That's awesome. And nachos are the move. I have a friend, and I want to make fun of him publicly now, if that's okay with you, Desi.
Yeah.
Whenever he makes, unless this is the way you eat them, in which case I'll stop making fun of people like this. But whenever he makes nachos, he sends me a picture because he lays them out chip by chip and tops each one of them chip by chip, as opposed to just doing the tower of nachos.
Oh no, I do the tower.
Thank
It
you.
probably benefits a little bit though because he probably has cheese and stuff on each chip. Where most of the time, like when you eat nachos with a big pile, once the pile's gone, then you just have chips, right? So it kind of, I kind of see his point, but I feel like that would take a lot of time.
That's fine. That's podcast guest Sam Davidson, by the way, friends. Feel free to judge him online and publicly.
Yeah.
And Desi, you're a better person than I am for taking the high road on that. So that's fine too. Um, so I love this. Desi, your name is Desi Garcia. And
Actually
you were telling me,
Desarae.
oh, you were telling me, oh,
But I
sorry, go
go
ahead.
by Desi. No, I was just gonna say it's actually Desiree, but I go by Desi.
Okay, perfect. Desarae Garcia. And you were telling me a little bit about it before we got on the air. Tell me a little bit about, what's your origin story? Where is your family from? Tell me about your last name, Garcia.
Okay, so my maiden last name is actually Martel. That was my dad's name. He is from San Salvador,
Mhm.
and he was born, raised there for the first parts of his life, and then he moved to San Francisco when he was like a young boy. I'm not sure exactly the age, and grew up in San Francisco, and then moved to Salt Lake. So I'm half a Salvadorian, and then also my mom is Spanish. So a lot of my family is Spanish, and yeah. So I'm Latina. That's the best way to explain it
Latina.
because I have a little bit of everything in me. I feel like so.
Yeah. Is that something that you have pride about? Like, do you have pride about being El Salvadorian or Spanish? Is that something that you are excited about? Anything you do culturally around it?
I love being like, I love my Spanish culture. I love the food. I love all of it. El Salvadorian food. There's this thing called a papusa. I don't know if you've ever had one.
Pupusas are so good.
Those are from San Salvador, and they are the best thing that's ever happened. And then also El Salvadorian tamales, which are different than Mexican tamales. They're
Mm,
actually wrapped in a banana leaf, and so they're like moist. They're not dry like
yeah.
the Mexican ones. And so anyway, those are really good. So the food is probably my favorite part. We just had Thanksgiving, and we do what's called pons con pavo, which is it's basically a turkey sandwich, a Salvadorian turkey sandwich, and you put like a red sauce over it, and it's so good. So pons con pavo, and that is the traditional thing that we have every Thanksgiving. I wish I had a picture of it, but yeah, it's basically a big roll turkey, and then you put this like salad that's like marinated with like cucumbers and like I don't know, all like beets and things like
Yeah.
that in it, and then you put the red sauce on top that cooks with the turkey, and you eat it, and it's amazing.
That sounds like it slaps. I gotta
It's
be
so good.
honest. The turkey, I may get called out for this, and that's fine. Y'all can come for me. But the turkey is my least favorite part of the Thanksgiving meal
Same. I'm
because
not a
it's
big
always
turkey.
dry.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. That's why I always eat ham. So I have the traditional Thanksgiving with my mom's family, and then I have, which, still has like chili verde and stuff like that,
Yeah.
for the Spanish in us. But for the most part, we just do the traditional. But my dad's side is the good, like I said, the sauce and stuff. And so I like that turkey because it's moist. But
Mhm.
other than that, yeah, turkey's just dry. I'd rather have ham any day.
Yeah, I want one of these sandwiches you're talking about. I need the one of
Yeah,
these. That sounds amazing. Um,
they're good.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, and you're right. Pupusas are so good. So
Yes.
that's awesome. So, but you yourself grew up in Salt Lake. You're born and raised in the Salt Lake area.
Yes.
Yeah. When you were younger, Desi, what did you want to be? Tell me about young Desi.
Ooh, young Desi. That's a little bit harder for me just because, we'll go into my story a little bit later. I don't ever, I kind of would go back and forth. I didn't really think too much about being an adult when I was younger. And I know that sounds
Mhm.
kind of weird, but when I did, at first I wanted to be a teacher. And then that's kind of like the last thing I remember of what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I was very shy, very timid, which is so funny because I'm so opposite from that now. I would kind of just kept to myself. I didn't have a ton of friends. I had a couple, I kind of was picked on because I was like, the little Spanish chubby girl in Utah with all the, white blonde skinny girls here. And so I didn't fit in very much. I definitely was kind of an outsider. I had, a couple best friends, and my best friend, who's still my best friend to this day since fourth grade. And if it wasn't for her beating up some of my bullies, I don't know, I don't know where I'd be. So yeah, I definitely am a lot different than little Desi. But yeah, I think I loved kind of just I don't know, I loved playing with Barbies, and I loved just kind of the basic kid stuff. I have three brothers and a
Mhm.
sister, and so I loved playing with my siblings and things like that. So
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to this best friend of yours taking care of the bullies out here. That's a ride or
yeah,
die right there.
she is. She's my ride or die for sure. Like I said, we've been best friends since fourth grade, and I had a bully who would always um, slap me in the back of the head on the school bus, and I just would go home and cry every day because I like didn't like her, and she was so mean to me. And she would like tell me that she. Oh, I think I just messed it up. Oh, there you go. She would like tell me that she was like a witch and like would watch me sleep in my through my window, just weird stuff. And I remember at school, she came up behind me and like pushed me. And all I remember is my best friend grabbing her, and her head went into the double doors, and that's all I remember. So she never bothered me after that. I had
Yeah.
to defend myself once with her on the bus after my mom finally told me that if I don't hit her back, I was going to get in trouble. And so she hit me in the back of the head, and I told her I remember being so terrified because I was so shy. And I was like, if you hit me again, I'm going to hit you back. And so she hit me again in the head. And then I guess I knocked her out or something on the bus. And then, yeah, that's all. And she never bothered me after that. Took those two things. And then that was the last thing. But yeah, those bullies, man, they were rough back in the day. So
a,
luckily my best friend had my back.
a casual TKO on the bus to stop the bullying. I
Yeah,
like it, Desi. I like
exactly.
this is why you got to keep your eye on the quiet person, right? There's a fire underneath there, and it's going
Yep.
to come out one way or the other.
Yeah, but you push that button. It takes a lot for me to go there. Even to this day, I'm your best friend, but yeah, you don't take it too far because Mama Bear will come out and
Yeah.
defend who I need to defend.
Yeah. And in the meantime, you got your best friend who's going after people on the front side of stuff. So it's fine.
Exactly. Yep.
That's it.
Exactly. And she's still my best friend, so I can just call her and be like, "Hey, we got a problem."
We got a problem.
Yeah. So she's still got my back.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. Uh, those childhood friendships are always so beautiful, but sometimes we don't find friends that round the corners of life with us.
Yeah.
Right. Even if it's just going through puberty together and then going through a transition to, going to New Mexico for a year.
Yeah.
And then, things like that. Like not everybody rounds the corners with us. So that's really cool that she's been by your side. What's her name?
So her name's Mindy, and yeah, she's been by my side. I remember when I called her when I was in New Mexico and I met my husband, and she was not at first. She was like, "Who's this like kid that you met in New Mexico?" She's always been very protective of me, and she was about ready to hop on a plane and come check him out before I went any further and like moved in with him or anything. And so she's always been very protective. Now her husband and my husband are like best friends, and it's a great dynamic. Our daughters are the same age, so yeah, you definitely I've had a lot of friends, great friends, but my situation has always been kind of complicated, and so it takes a good friend to kind of stick through all of that, and she has stuck through my side through all of that, and so I'm super grateful for her, and she's my only like friend that stuck through everything with me, so I'm super grateful for her. So
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Shout out to Mindy. That's awesome. That's awesome. You mentioned that you didn't think a lot about being what you would be as an adult or what adulthood would look like for you. Now
Mhm.
that is that's a tough sentence to hear, and it's
Mhm.
because you went through some tough stuff.
Right.
If you'd be willing, I'd love to hear a little bit about what kept you from dreaming, what kept you from whatever it was, right? Wanted to be a veterinarian or a marine biologist like I wanted to be when I was younger, or a
That's
doctor
cool.
or a teacher, or things like that. What was it that kind of squashed that or didn't allow
Yeah.
that to come out?
So, well, to kind of answer that question first, I didn't really think I'd make it, honestly, to be an adult. So I never I was more of, am I going to live till tomorrow, let alone am I going to make it to be an adult? I never really thought, a lot of kids, or a lot of girls especially, grow up and they have their books of what they want to do when they get married, and they're, want to have kids and this and that. And I don't really remember ever having those thoughts until I was like older. Um, so I was actually basically born into trauma, is the best way I can explain it. My mom and dad were married. They got married very young. My mom was pregnant with me. They got married when she was, ooh, I don't want to mess it up, but I want to say she was still 17. If not, she had just turned 18, because her
Mm.
birthday's September and mine's October 3rd. So either like barely. My dad was, I think, 2 years older than her, so he was 19. Um, and my dad had went through a lot of abuse as a child, physical, sexual abuse, a lot of things. And so my dad had a lot of issues and a lot of anger issues. And so him and my mom's relationship, was very toxic and abusive. And I saw a lot of things that I shouldn't have seen at, 3, 4 years old, 2 years old, whatever. Um, you know, I had a little brother who's 3 years younger than me, and I remember sitting in the closet holding him when they were fighting one time, and like trying to protect him, and just things that you shouldn't go through as a kid. Basically, you shouldn't be, you should be able to just play in your room, play with your Barbies, and not have to worry about those things. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But luckily, they kind of both realized it and got divorced when I was 6. And that's when my mom met my old stepfather, and then my dad got remarried as well. My stepmother was not nice to me, so I didn't really like going to my dad's very often. And then my mom's new husband, I don't remember, kind of from 6 to 8. I have like a very vague memories. The only like couple memories I have, one is where I guess I was watching Lion King or something, and he went outside and I locked him out, and then I turned Lion King up really loud and locked him out of the apartment. And like he had to like bang on the door. He like waited until my mom got home from work. I like left him locked outside. I don't remember very much of that. I just remember bits and pieces of that. So I don't know. I don't know if I had a radar. I don't know if I was just a 6-year-old brat. I'm not sure exactly.
Mhm.
Um, but I do know that around 8 years old is the first memory I have. Again, from my childhood, I have very bits and pieces missing. Big chunks of my childhood missing from my memory. But at 8 years old is from the first memory I have of when my stepfather was sexually abusing me. It was the typical grooming, molestation, and then from there it turned into full child sexual abuse, and that went on until I was about 15 years old.
Mm.
Um, it became, it was every once in a while, to every week, to every day, to I would get checked out during school. I would, he would tell my teachers I had a dentist appointment, and then I would go, and then he'd bring me back to school, and I'd have to finish my day at school, and weird things like that. That happened for years of my life, and because of what happened, he was also very physically abusive. He would punch me so hard that I'm pretty sure I never got it confirmed, but I'm pretty sure I broke my ribs at one point because they still have scarring. Um, uh, he would hold pillows over my face so I would pass out, and I would come back. I would come back. I don't know how long later. Punch me in the stomach that I would like lose consciousness. Things like that. So I don't remember. I remember like he would hold knives to my throat. Lots of different things like that. And so that went on, like I said, until I was about almost 15. Because what was happening to me, I had a lot of self-destructive behavior. Because of my dad and my relationship, my biological dad, my real dad. I kind of distanced myself from my dad because I think, one, my dad was a detective, ironically, a sex crime detective, he was a very known detective here in Utah because he did the Susan Powell case, helped with the Susan Powell case, a lot of
Mm.
big cases here in Utah. But my dad didn't know what was happening to me, and I definitely think I pushed my dad out of my life because I didn't want him to figure it out because I was scared. Because I would, my old stepdad would threaten that he would kill my dad, that he would kill my mom, bury my brothers alive. things like that. Very threatening. And he was the guy, I mean, for example, he had a tattoo that said no fear. Like he wasn't scared of anything, you know? And so, yeah, I didn't really have a relationship with my dad at the time. And so he used that for to his advantage, I think. And then like, I don't know, he kind of would use that as an excuse for lots of different things. And so, yeah, because of that, all that was going on, I was doing self-destructive behavior. I had an eating disorder. I was really bad bulimic, and then I would go anorexic. I would go back and forth.
Mhm.
Again, kind of back to my bullying situation. I was being bullied at home and I was being bullied at school pretty bad. And so I was constantly, and I had tried to gain weight on purpose, and I would make myself look ugly because I thought he wouldn't want me more. So if I was like not cute, or if I had like was a little chubby or whatever, it was
Yeah.
because I thought that's how he wouldn't want to hurt me if that was the case. But unfortunately, it just made me become more of a target at school. And so I just didn't really have a safe place anywhere. So I started cutting. I tried to attempt suicide a couple different times. And then right before I reported it, I had tried a suicide attempt, and my school reported it to my mom, and it was this whole big thing. A couple weeks later, we had just moved into a house that we had just bought, and I had talked my mom into letting me get a lock on my door because I was a teenager and felt like I needed to have that space, and that was kind of my excuse to do it. Um, One thing I will say is people always ask, how did your mom not know? Well, he was very abusive to her, but he was also very manipulative. John was a very, very good liar, and he made
Mm.
me a very good liar to where I was able to go. He would take me, hurt me, and I'd go back to school and laugh and have a good day at school because I was able to completely shut that part of me off. I think I would completely disassociate from my body. Um, and so I never gave signs of what was happening. I definitely think there were signs now that my mom looks back. She's like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I question that? That's why I'm a huge advocate to parents to talk to your kids on a regular basis about things and check with them and ask questions. If someone would have asked me, then I probably would have told. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I was never asked those
Yeah,
questions.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, so then that night, I got a lock on my door. I had hid a key at Mindy's house. I remember I hid a key, and then I hid a key somewhere else. I think I took it at school. And I heard he was on the other side of my door trying to pick the lock. And that night, I remember just freezing. And I don't remember much of it. I think, again, I kind of disassociated. I don't remember too much except for I always say like a higher power took over me, which I feel like it was, for me, I feel like it was God that was just like, we do this now or you're not going to make it. Like, we got to do this now. And so I got up the next day, and I didn't sleep a wink that night. I've always had really bad insomnia, so I wouldn't sleep anyway. And so I ran to school as fast as I could, and I went and told a teacher. This teacher was already like a really good ally for me. She who had
Yeah.
called like the suicide hotline with me. She had seen my rope marks from when I had tried to commit suicide. She had seen lots of different things, and so she was kind of a space that I knew would help me if I needed it. So ran to school as fast as I could. Told one of my close friends at school, and had her go with me to tell my teacher. My teacher went and reported it to the school counselor right away, and the school counselor told her that I was lying and probably just being a drama queen. Because
Whoa.
because
No.
yeah, and this is a school counselor. So I remember my teacher luckily like fought for me and told her that's not our job to figure that out. If this is lie or not, our job's to report it, and that's all that we can do. And so she did. They reported it, and then I remember the detective coming, and I was waiting in the office, and she came up and she goes, "Look, your teacher told me that this is what's happening to you, but your school counselor doesn't think it's true. I need you to know, like, this is a huge accusation, and I need to know if it's true, because if it's not, then I'll leave right now and you won't get in trouble. But if it is happening, then I'll help you." And I guess I don't know if I started crying. I don't remember if I like her was something in my face. I just remember telling her, "I promise that this is happening, and if you send me home, he'll kill me." And I remember she grabbed my hand, and she um just started, her eyes teared up, and she was like, "Okay, I believe you." And that was the beginning of me, kind of being free. He wasn't arrested right away. He They didn't have proof because nothing had happened in a few days, so they didn't have any like evidence, they didn't have any proof of anything. And so I had to take a lie detector test. I ended up passing the lie detector test. He took a lie detector test and he did not pass, but he did not fail. His was like inconclusive, which blows my mind. But now knowing what I know about psychology and how our brain works, I think that he believed his own lies. He believed that he wasn't hurting me. He
Yeah.
believed that he loved me. He believed those things. And so in his head, he didn't hurt me. And so it's really messed up and it's a full narcissist behavior. But yeah. So he ended up being, we went to court. I tried testifying. I had a complete meltdown in the courtroom. My mom and dad read a letter to him that, my biological dad came back into my life when everything came out, and he read a letter in court. And I remember he like yelled at him, and that like triggered me. And then I just kind of remember losing it in the courtroom from there. So I never testified against him, which kind of sucked because I wasn't able to take that power back, which I
Yeah.
now realize is so important. Excuse me. So anyway, he ended up being sentenced to 3 to life. He ended up being in there for a total of 10 years, but only 5 for what he did to me, because the other 5 was basically he got attempted murder of his cellmate because he like broke his jaw and like had to get his, I don't know, there was some type of major thing in jail that he got. So he got like multiple charges on that. So he's a very violent person, obviously. And so anyway, he ended up spending 10 years there. Well, during the 10 years there, while he was there, after I reported the abuse, I kind of went into a downward spiral, honestly. And I became more self-destructive. I pushed my mom away. I was so angry with my parents, so angry with my mom. I would fight with them. I mean, it was just really bad. I was just really, a really hard, like I was just basically losing it. And my parents really didn't know what to do. So they ended up putting me in a residential treatment program here in Utah, part of one of the major children's hospitals here in Utah. And I actually lived there for 2 years. I was in the residential treatment program for 10 years, or excuse me, for 2 years, not 10 years, for 2 years. I was there from 15 to 17, like like summer before I turned 18. So yeah, it was 2 years of being there. And during those 2 years, I was diagnosed with they thought I had borderline personality disorder, PTSD, major anxiety, this and that. Well, I didn't have borderline personality disorder, but what I did end up getting diagnosed with was dissociation identity disorder, which a lot of people, so it's less than 2% of the entire world have it. So it's a very not common disease, or
Yeah.
excuse me, diagnosis. But basically, people, when they look up DID, they think multiple personalities. So that's a lot of times what happens. People get multiple personalities to help them disassociate themselves from what's actually happening to them. That was not the case for me. I never had multiple personalities. I never have. But what would happen is I would go back into being the age I was during that incident that I was reenacting. So, for example, I'd be sitting here, and like I always say, if you ever saw That's So Raven, this girl, it was like an old TV show on Disney Channel, and she would see visions, and she would like go off into a daze, and then she'd start seeing visions. That's kind of how my therapist would describe it. Is I would just be sitting there. Oops, sorry, hold on, my ear probably fell out. These are like too big for my ears. I feel like they keep falling out. So I would be sitting there, and I would basically just go off into a daze, and I'd come back, and I would talk like I was 8 years old. 8 years old. I thought I was 8 years old. I acted like I was 8 years old. I would sit in the corner and ask for my mom. I was, a child again. And my body actually thought that this abuse was happening. So I would reenact the abuse. Like I would throw myself on the floor. My face would turn purple in some cases because I thought he was holding a pillow over my head. I wouldn't be able to move my arms because he was holding me down. I'd come out of it and have red marks on my arms because my brain physically thought something happened to me. And so my body would react if something did. I would stop breathing because I thought someone would punch me in the stomach. Weird things that like is not normal, but I would completely reenact situations of abuse. So they ended up having to bring in specialists and all types of different people to figure out what was wrong with me and diagnose me. Luckily, I've gotten that under control. I haven't had an episode in years with that. But that was a big part of my teenage years is me having those episodes. I would lose hours of my day. I would be sitting here talking to my therapist or talking to someone in rehab, and all of a sudden I'd come out of it and I'd have 15 people around me and 3 hours of my day would be gone. Or it was really weird. So yeah, and I never remembered what happened either. Like everything I explained to you from it is from what I've heard from therapists and doctors. I've never actually remember or seen an episode that I had. So yeah, it's very rare. Like I said, I ended up getting out when I was 17, and that's when I basically was like, I'm gonna move to New Mexico. I'm gonna go, live with my family that's out there, and I'm gonna go out there, and I'm just gonna figure it out. So I moved out to New Mexico. I ended up meeting my husband there. And for the next about 10 years, I kind of just went through the motions of life. That's when I started becoming a counselor. I first was a psych tech, and then I kind of just went up the um, ladder in that and became a counselor. And so for most of my career, I was very good at my job, but people didn't know why. People didn't know why I was good at my job,
Mm.
why I was interested in what I did, and why I was interested in working in psych hospitals and rehabilitation centers and all of those things. People just thought I was probably like, why does she like that stuff? It's crazy. But eventually, once I started coming out with my story, then people started making sense, putting the pieces together. But again, I was very good at living two lives. I had done it my entire life. I had my life at home, and I had my life that's like outside in the public. So I kind of had created that narrative of my life forever. I had my life with my husband, and I went home, but then I had my life at work, but then I also had a life of my mental health and all the stuff I was actually internally dealing with. But I
Yeah.
never talked about it. I didn't talk about it with my husband. I didn't talk about it. I never went to therapy again. I quit all my medications. When I left rehab, I left with a freezer bag full of medications. I quit all of them. I just basically just stopped and pretended like that part of my life didn't exist. Um, which, a lot of people say sometimes fake it till you make it. But let me just tell you, it comes back and bites you in the ass at some point if you don't work through it. And that's kind of what happened to me. So during my husband and I, when we were together, first together, I had ended up having, because of the internal body damage I had like scar tissue and lots of different things. I actually had 5 miscarriages and an ectopic pregnancy that I lost. And so I was told I wouldn't be able to have kids, so many different things. Thank goodness, it was a blessing. I ended up having 2 kids. I have a 9-year-old son, and my daughter's about to turn 7. They're the only 2 I can have. I ended up having my tubes tied because I almost died after I had my daughter. But they're definitely a blessing I wasn't supposed to have. And so I'm super grateful for that. But during those years, I just, again, went through the motions of life. I was a good mom. I went to work. I came home. I cooked dinner. I just went through life, just not living, but surviving. Right. And so in 2015, I got a call that my stepfather was up for parole. And I went to the parole hearing. I wrote my victim statement, and I actually read it to the court. It was the first time I was actually able to read it, and I felt like it was when I actually felt my power back, because I was actually telling him what he had done to me and the effects that he had on my life, and because I wasn't able to do that for the first court hearing. So he ended up being released. They didn't really listen to me, but it's okay. That's kind of what happens, unfortunately, with the justice system. He ended up being released, and from the beginning, when he was first put in jail, I remember telling my therapist when I was in rehab, I just know it's not over. I just know it's not over. He's gonna come after me. Something in me, and I don't know how to explain it, but something always in my soul knew it wasn't the end. And so, fast forward to 2019. Before that, let me go back and say, before that, I would think that I would see him. I would like be at Costco, and I would be like, oh my gosh, I swear I just saw him. I just saw John. Like, what the heck? Or I would be driving, and I would think I saw him. And so many different things that I was like, I swear I saw him. I told my dad, who again was a retired police detective, and he would be like, why would he come after you again? Like, he's out living his life. Like, don't worry, it's not him. He's not coming after you anymore, whatever. Well, he's actually the father of my little brother. So I was like, well, what if he's looking for my brother? This and that. Well, anyway, long story short is people basically just said it was my PTSD and that I was imagining everything and that it wasn't the case. So again, fast forward 2019, I had just started my podcast in that March. And that's when my husband came home one day and was like, I know what you can do. You need to do a podcast. I just listened to the Elon Musk podcast. You need to do one. And I had never listened to a podcast before. And I was like, what the heck's a podcast? Like I had always been told, anytime I started telling my story and I would tell it, I would leave jaws open of, oh my gosh, you need to you need to write a book. You need to do a movie. Like this has to be some type of story that you need to get out there. But I never knew what the like, nothing felt right. So when my husband said that, I was like, okay, let's kind of see how that goes. So I got like my old like HP laptop, a little old microphone that I had. I think it was like actually the earpiece with like the string that had the little mic on it. Not good product at all. Not good quality, but whatever. And I just went in my closet and I recorded in my first episode. And my story is season 1, but it's episode 1, 2, 4, and 8 because my story is long. So those are the episodes for my story that's on my podcast. If you go back and listen to it, but I recorded the first episode and released it in March of 2019. And my first episode went pretty viral. I had thousands of views within the first 24 hours. It was insane. And I remember being so confused and like looking at it and being like, what in the hell just happened? Like, I thought it was just going to be like the people I went to school with and like my family. And like, I did not think it was going to be like go out there. I also had no idea what I was doing. I just uploaded it on Anchor and kind of just to see what would happen,
Right, yeah.
And it went viral and I was like, what in the hell just happened? And so that's when I kind of had the conclusion of like, okay, I need to tell the rest of my story. And then I'm going to start giving the mic to other people because other survivors I realized that like survivors needed this outlet. Like when that episode went viral within the first 2 days, I had hundreds of messages from people saying, you just gave me the strength to tell my parents what happened to me when I was a kid. You just gave me the strength to talk about my story for the first time in 15 years. Things like that I was like in tears, like mind blown. Cause I was like, holy crap, this is so needed. Why don't we have anything like this? And, now there's more podcasts and stuff. But when I started a couple years ago, podcasts just kind of became a thing. So it wasn't popular yet. And so it kind of blew up. I had celebrities contacting me. I had people like that were like, hey, I want to be on your podcast and tell my story and just crazy things. And so I realized like, this is my purpose. And I always, since I was younger, and I know this might sound weird, but when you say what I envisioned, when I finally got to that point where I realized I was going to live, I remember thinking I have a purpose. Like when I was being abused, I remember this one specific time praying and thinking, why am I going through this? Like, why are you letting this happen to me? I'm so like, what did I do? Like, what do I need to do with this story? And being kind of confused about it. And then after everything came out, I realized, and I had a vision, and I don't know if it's a vision or dream. I really don't know what it was, but I had some type of dream that I was on stage and there were thousands, like hundreds and thousands of people, and they were all holding a book with my face on it. And I remember being like, I'm supposed to do something big with my story and like just knowing what my purpose was. And so when my podcast came out, I was like, this is my purpose. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Give people their voice back and, all of that. But then as my story went on, I realized, and then I'll kind of get to what happened in 2019. So in July 2019, I get a phone call from the FBI and they say, hey, I don't know if you know that John was rearrested. And I was like, yeah, I was informed he was rearrested. And they're like, well, he was rearrested for child pornography. Wasn't necessarily surprised just because he was always into pornography. And I have always said pornography was a huge part of my abuse because I feel like it's what kind of got in his head to make him think that what he was doing was okay.
Yeah.
And so when he told me child pornography, I was like in my head thinking, I'm not surprised, but he's crossed the line. He's officially a sicko, right? And like kind of just like it didn't make sense to me. And here I was working at a huge hospital here in Utah as a crisis worker, where I would go basically on scene after someone was raped or someone who's trying to commit suicide. It was my job to talk them off the ledge. Like I was in some pretty traumatic cases. And so here I am putting out my podcast and saving people, right? And trying to do all this. And then this detective calls and says, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but John had over 200 pictures on his laptop, his phone, and his apartment that was pictures of child pornography with your face cut out and put on every single picture.
Whoa.
So he digitally and physically had pictures of me from now, pictures of me on scene of crisis interventions with police so he was stalking me like while I was with police on scene, like in the parking lot, walking to my car in the parking garage. There's a picture of me on my front doorstep, pictures of me at the park with my kids, pictures of me at Costco. Dude was following me for a few years and I knew it and I felt it, but I always was told it was my PTSD and not to, don't believe it or whatever. But in my stomach, I always tell survivors, if you feel like something's wrong in your gut, you need to look into it. And sometimes it is just our PTSD, but most of the time, if something's telling you something's wrong, it's because something's wrong. And so he had pictures of me. I was his screensaver on his cell phone. When the police arrested him, they asked him why I was his screensaver on his laptop and cell phone. And he said, because I was his girlfriend. And so the detective put two and two together and realized that he was so obsessed with me that this couldn't have just been a girlfriend. So he looked up what his original case was that he was arrested for and found out, looked me up on Facebook, realized that was me in the picture, and then contacted me. It was very like crazy FBI detective work that they figured out it was me. But yeah, he had a full obsession of me. He had basically the best way to explain it is like a shrine of me in his apartment. But the detective told me the day he called us that, honestly, all I can say is we're glad that we found him when we did, because his stalking was escalating. And what we found in his apartment and in his car, I think he had other intentions. So I believe that he was planning to abduct me and I don't know what, torture me. I have no idea. He had some type of obsession with me. In jail, he still does. He tells people and talks about me. In court, he told the people that he was excited that I was there supporting him when really I was testifying against him. Just psychotic, like literally an obsession. And here, this was my stepfather. This is the father of my little brother, my mom's ex-husband. Like just this, it's sickening when I say it out, like when I think about it and say it out loud, because it's so messed up, right?
Right. Yeah.
So again, when this all came out, I was like hit in the face because I did not expect that. Like, yes, I suspected something, but I never suspected this bad. Like, this is like Lifetime Movie Network shit, right? Like, this is like rated R, like crazy movies that like this doesn't actually happen in real life, stalker shit.
Yeah.
Well,
hell yeah.
it was happening in my life. And so I was so frustrated because I was like, here I am going to court with victims to face their perpetrators. At this point, I had started that, doing podcast episodes, giving people a voice, but yeah, I'm being victimized all over again. No, I'm not being raped and physically abused anymore, but I'm still being victimized in a whole other messed up way. And so it was a real mind game of me trying to be like, what do I do now? Like, I can't keep going. I'm a fraud. Like, I can't keep telling people to survive because obviously I'm a victim again. Like, I was so, that story in my head was really messing with me. But I remember a couple, like after, being depressed and in bed for about a week, I finally got myself up and I was like, F this. Like, I am not going to let him take any more of my life. And that's when I kind of released my other episode and started talking about it. I ended up being on the news. ABC did a whole thing on me. They actually released my story without telling me, and we're planning to bombard me in court. We're planning to show up to court and surprise me in court, which is insane to me. I called them and they did a whole story and they messed up the story and said, man who raped a girl in 2004 finds her and totally messed up the story. So I was like, okay, it wasn't just a one-time event. And I called and I said, if you're going to tell the story, you're going to tell it right. So I'm going to do an interview. So I went on there, did an interview, explained the whole situation. Again, that went viral because people were mind boggled by that this actually happened, that the court system failed me, because when I thought that I had seen him at Costco and those other places, I called his parole officer several times and left voicemails and never received a call back. I even called the Board of Pardons and still never received a call back. So
really,
if they would have called me back, sooner, this could have stopped a lot sooner than it did. So when I went to court in July last year, I wrote a letter to my old stepdad and the court. And I said, if you guys failed me. And this is why survivors don't come out and tell their story, because you say you're going to protect us, but you don't. And so that's why I'm a huge advocate for survivors in court now. because I feel like they don't do what they say they're supposed to do. If, his parole officer would have been checking up on him and looking at his computer and doing the things that he was supposed to be doing, he would have caught this before it happened. And so, or at least at the beginning of it, right? And so just the whole situation was a really kind of crazy situation. But like I said, I just decided, you know what? On my news interview, I said, he took my childhood, he took my past, but he will not take my future. And that kind of took a huge blow up of people being like, yes, he took, that's awesome. Like she said that and this and that. But I really believed it because I was like, in my head, in that moment, it just came out. But in my head, I was like, it's true. Like our abusers, the people who hurt us, take parts of our lives, take sometimes years, sometimes moments of our lives. But it doesn't mean that it has to be our entire life. And that's what made me kind of want to start Candle in a Dark Room as a foundation and not just a podcast. And so last year after court, I applied for it to be a nonprofit. And I said, I got a team together and I just said, we're going to be more than just a podcast. We're going to actually show people that in the darkest of darkness, in the darkest things that you can think of, because I've heard it all doing what I do now, you can still find light. You can still find light within yourself, or you can find light within someone else who can help guide you out into the dark, out of the darkness. Whatever it is, no matter how dark things may be, and no matter the horrible things that have happened to you, you can still live a happy, joyful, and light, and a life that is full of light. And yeah, horrible things have happened to me, and it's things that I can't even explain because they're too, intense and things like that. But I try not to focus so much on that anymore. Instead, I use my story as this is, people ask me all the time, how do you do what you do? I now do with my foundation one-on-one sessions with people where I do a mix between counseling and coaching. And I hear stories of I work with trafficking survivors. I work with, a child abuse survivor, other people, one-time rape survivors, whatever the situation is. And I've heard all this horrible things that you could think of. But yes, it's hard. I'm not going to lie and say this work's easy. I definitely have to keep my mindset right and do the work for myself to keep myself in a good headspace. But if anything, it fires me up of this was my purpose. My purpose wasn't a podcast. I think it's part of the story, but I think my purpose is to show people that you can still find light and live a happy life after things have happened to you. It takes work. It's not going to be easy. It's a lifelong commitment, but you can do it. Yes, I have to get up every day and sometimes do the, if I feel triggered, do the tools I've learned and the things I know to help get me through the day. But more times than none, I'm happy. I am happy with my life. I'm happy with my kids. I'm not in fear anymore. And that's freedom. And now I get to decide what to do with my story. Yes, he took a part of my story, but he doesn't get it right the rest of it. I do. So that's what my purpose with Candle Dark Room is. And now our next women's retreat is in March. We do healing retreats. We do group support groups. I do, like I said, one-on-one clients. I work with one-on-one clients. We do, I'm trying to think, just so many other things that just offer other resources. Like I said, different types of support groups and things. So people know that they're not alone. Some of it's virtual, some of it's in person. But yeah, we do a lot of different things. I'm a public speaker. I go and speak to colleges and high schools and, try to tell people you're not alone. You can ask for the right help and that you can be rescued from a situation like this.
So Desi?
Oops. Sorry, I dropped my earpod. Okay, go ahead.
Desi, there's so much there.
Yeah.
First off, that is the quietest I've ever been on this podcast. So shout out to you.
Oh my gosh. I warned you.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's not a story that can be interrupted, nor should it be. And also, sometimes, when we've experienced trauma, when we've gone through hard things, we just need to tell the whole story.
Yeah.
And then we can go back through and kind of pick apart some things or whatnot. But right, in order for you to get through it, this is this is how
Well,
you,
again, my podcast is 4 episodes on my podcast. So this
yeah,
was really making it into something short, and it's still not short.
scratching the surface of something,
Right.
of a life of trauma.
Yep.
Right. And it's interesting because, we started, uh, we brought up your story on the question of what kept you from dreaming about more as a child.
Hmm.
And abuse is so misunderstood by people who haven't dealt with it.
Absolutely.
And uh, hearing your story the way that you told it, I mean, it's kind of hard to fathom a little girl, a little boy, a little human not dreaming about something.
Right.
Right. But like, because of what you went through,
Yeah.
um, what was there to dream about?
Yeah.
And it's profound hearing about the chunks, the spottiness of your memory for all of the different reasons at the various points of your life where it is so choppy and cut up and screwed. And um, it's really it's really powerful to hear you tell your story. I want to thank you for trusting me, for trusting the people who hear this with your story. Right? It is not a
Yeah.
story that we need to trust. We don't have to trust our story with everybody,
Right.
and you know that because for 7 years you didn't trust anybody with yours,
Yep.
right? uh and even then, right, it still took time to come out, and so it
Exactly.
is it's incredible what you have done from what you went through to the work that you are doing now. uh and I want to talk about Candle in a Dark Room in just a second, uh because the work that you're doing right now is really profound. When it comes to before we do that, I'm curious to hear, you know, a lot of people have met somebody who has gone through abuse. Eh, maybe and unbeknownst to us, we may be meeting somebody who is going through abuse. Uh,
Right.
what thoughts, advice, or tactics, or whatnot, um, would you ask others to look out for, in some of those situations? And also, I'll ask a two-part question. What, that, and then also, um, what's the best way for someone who isn't trained about it, who isn't going and advocating for people in courtrooms, who is just the Mindys of the world, who don't, what I'm saying, who just trying to be your ride or die and the person that loves you, but doesn't necessarily, I mean, how do you show up for somebody sometimes who's
Yeah.
going through so much? So I'd be curious to hear your
Okay.
thoughts on that.
Yeah. So the first one you said is what to look for. Um, it's hard because there isn't always major signs, but there's a few. Like, for example, if it's a child, um, their behavior of acting out is one. Maybe their grades in school, not sleeping, having nightmares, peeing the bed, um, anxiety whenever you're not home or you come home from work from somewhere. Um, secrets of like feeling like your kids have secrets, but, like, can't tell you, like, they don't feel comfortable. I'm very open with my kids about what I do and about why I do it. They don't know the details. All they know is that I was hurt as a child. But they know enough of like their boundaries and why it's important to have boundaries for themselves. So I always say to, communication, letting your kids know that you're a safe place, that they can trust you. If it's happening from your parents, then you find a grandparent, you find a teacher at school, you find that person that that's going to help you in some way or another. If you don't have anybody, then you reach out to people like me, reach out to resources like Rain, my foundation. There's so many other, foundations and resources for people to be able to call. But that's my biggest thing is, I think for parents to look for signs of just when something's wrong with your child. My son, something happens at school, as soon as I pick him up, what happened? What'd you get in trouble for? Right? Their face of something's wrong.
Yeah.
And my mom looks back now and she's like, now that I realize, like, yeah, I didn't sleep in my room by myself until I was 15 years old. 14 years old. I slept in my little brother's room, who's 3 years younger than me. And I would sleep by the wall on our bunk bed on the same, we'd only sleep on the bottom and I would sleep by the wall. And I would only let him sleep on the side of me because I didn't want John to have access to me on the other side. So I would sleep by the wall. It still never prevented anything, but in my head, that felt safer to me. So weird things like that, look for if your kids are, start changing their behavior and those type of things. Random bruises and marks and just, again, all of a sudden they don't want to change in front of you. Like your kid, like all of a sudden is being really protective of their private parts and things like that. There's definitely some major signs to look for. And then to be there for people. Biggest thing is to believe them. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it's so big in validating what they're telling you. Even if something seems off to you, that's not your job to figure it out. That's not your job to call them a liar. That's not your job to investigate and to talk to the person that they're blaming. Your job is to protect them, even if it's just your friend. It's still your job to help that person by helping them figuring out who to report to, who do we go to, how can I be, what is it that you need, how can I support you? And that's the biggest thing is just asking, like, what is it that you need? If the person's an adult and they come and tell their friend, as their friend, just be like, you know what, I'm so sorry that happened to you. What do you want to do? Do you want me to go with you to report this?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you need from me? And something as simple as that can literally save their life because, I had many times, like I said, when I tried to commit suicide because I didn't feel like anybody cared. I didn't feel like anyone actually cared about what happened to me. And so I thought that me being out of this world was not, would be better for everyone. And that's not the case. And, everybody has a purpose in this world. And all they need to hear is that they're validated and that they're worthy and that they're worth helping. And if you are a stranger to them and you could tell something's wrong, be that light that guides them out of the darkness. And, I have a shirt right now, we're selling a sweatshirt and it says be a light, because you being a light for someone and just letting them know they're not alone, sending them a text message once a day, hey, how are you doing? Just checking in to see if you're okay. Let me know if you need anything. Could literally save them from committing suicide, can literally save them from taking that bottle of pills. And you have no idea like how many times I've heard that.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me, and I hope in bringing this up, you hear why I'm bringing it up, not at all to center myself in the conversation, but a friend of mine, she was going through a tough time, and I put a lunch date on our calendar, and not knowing that would be what it was, but like she kind of told me at that lunch date, she's like, you gave me something to look forward to. Right, because I was thinking about hurting myself, and that was unintentional act of a moment there, just try to be a friend, and so I don't deserve anything, but it just goes to show exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
You're right, the believing in you believe them sounds so easy, yet for some reason it is hard, because oftentimes it's people we know, right? You see this with all
96%
sexual
of the
violence.
time. Yeah, 96% is people that they know. So
Right.
if
And so
they're
therefore,
telling you, you probably know the person too.
right. And so everybody's like, no, not so-and-so. They're a good guy. No, that's not going on. No, they're all right. Right. And so I could think about times like that where I haven't been the best advocate. When someone told me what was going on, I was like, nah, they wouldn't do that to you. Right. And I would love to go back and take some of those moments back of just like, how would the conversation have shifted if I was like, all right, that's messed up, keep talking. Right.
Yeah.
And just in that moment. And so,
and you don't have to be a hero and you go report it to the police and do the whole big old thing. Like sometimes I get it. It's not everyone wants to be that hero, and I get that. But just you listening and saying, I'm so sorry that happened to you and that you've gone through that could be a life changer.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is not the moment for us to pull out our natural fixer tendencies.
Right.
This is the moment for us to hit empathy first, and fixing can come along. But this is, and this is the thing, is that, this is what you described in your situation, and why people close to us are able to do this is the master manipulators.
Hmm.
And it's one of the worst things that we could do to make somebody else feel like they're the crazy one, right?
Yep.
Well, we see this
Yep.
all the time. Men are doing it to women left and right? And men are constantly
Yep.
told, or constantly tell women that they're crazy, or that
Yep.
they're dramatic, that they're this, when it's an issue, it's sexist.
Right.
And so it is one of the worst things to tell somebody, is that the way you're thinking is crazy.
Well,
You're
the
dumb.
thing
You're
is
stupid.
like I get like my therapist or my old counselor, school counselor, she's being a
Yes.
drama queen. Like, yeah, I probably was a drama queen in junior high. I was very, I was acting out. I was doing self-destructive behavior. I was doing things, but it's because I was calling for help. And that's what I think the counselors and people need to understand is, yeah, maybe I was being a drama queen. I was doing those things, seeking doing negative attention seeking, but it's because I needed attention. I needed a call for help. I needed someone to pay attention to me. So if someone's doing that, it's because they need it. They need it for some reason or another. And that's what I wish people would understand is, doesn't mean, yes, I was doing those things, but there's a reason behind it. There's a reason why I was being dramatic. There's a
Yeah.
reason why I was doing those. So that's, I think, what people need to understand too, is like understanding the root of why people do the things they do. Why are kids acting out when they come to school, and why are kids punching other kids at school? Well, maybe because they're seeing it at home, right? Like there's always the underlying reason, and that's what people need to be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beauty of Candle in a Dark Room. And that's what I want to end on, is having you tell us a little bit more about Candle in a Dark Room. Who should be reaching out to you? Is it individuals that potentially have someone that they're worried about, and they're looking for a resource of someone to talk to, or is it just the person who is receiving the abuse or going through the trauma? Right? It's not just a Candle in the Dark Room. It's not just as a trauma based entity, not just a sexual violence abuse situation.
Right.
Tell us about
No,
it.
we actually, what my goal is by the end of 2022. So we actually help not only the survivor, but we help the like the survivors' families. So helping, for example, like my mom and my brothers, like now offer resources for family members like that, because secondary trauma is important. It's just as traumatic. And my brother lost his dad because he what it did to me. My mom lost her husband and found out horrible things that her husband that she loved and was doing something to her daughter. Like my other brother was being physically abused by him. There's always some secondary trauma. So we offer resources and support groups and things like that, to those people as well, including the victim. So our goal for 2022 is to have eventually I want to have a one-stop shop, basically was what I like to call it, um, where it's a place that anybody can come in for reporting, for support.
Mhm.
Hey, this just happened to me. What do I do? Okay, let me walk you through. Let's go report this together. We'll send an advocate with you to go report it to the police station, whatever. Hey, my daughter just came up to me yesterday and told me that my boyfriend did this to her. What do I do? Or we just found out my husband did this and he's already in jail, but now we're all don't know what to do from here. Okay, well, we offer support groups, and you know what I mean? I want to have a one place where we have all of these resources for anybody to come in and ask for help. Um, so right now we have a few different things that we offer. So again, we offer the podcast.
Mhm.
That can be for not only survivors, but it can be for again a spouse of a victim, a parent of a victim who it's awesome to hear from other point of views.
Yeah.
Survivor support groups, community, and other survivors. Like supporting one another. So we have like support groups and other things like that. We do meetups, one-on-one coaching programs, group coaching courses. We do workshops. Again, I speak like at events and I'll have speaking panels and stuff for survivors to come to and get information. Healing retreats. We do challenges, for families and their kids and for anybody in the public to participate in. But yeah, I want to have this one stop shop basically where we have a crisis intervention team to where, let's say, the police call and they're like, hey, we just have a 17-year-old girl who was raped and has no family. Okay, I'm sending one of my advocates right now. And we show up at the hospital and just hold their hand through the rape crisis, the rape kit, and let them know that there's, we're going to help them after they're done leaving the hospital. We'll help give them resources then. So yeah, so we offer a lot of this stuff right now. But eventually I want to have an actual location that people can call and come to instead of, kind of all over just the internet right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we offer lots of different things for just know like it's not just about the victim. It's not just about the survivor. It's a whole family dynamic that gets, especially if it's someone in the family that was the abuser. So, and then it's, for people who don't have any support and don't have family at all, we're there for you too, to know that you're not alone. We have a community, our last women's retreat, we had 30 something women come, and now they're lifelong friends of all around the country of women who can send a message in our group message and be like, hey guys, I was triggered today. I'm really struggling. And have a group of women be like, hey girl, you've got this. Like, let's talk, let's do a Zoom. You know what I mean? It's just, you have a community of people, men and women, to support you. So you're not alone in those times.
Incredible. Incredible. Desi, thank you. Thank you for the light that you are to so many. And thank you for finding your superpower out of a complete shit show.
Yeah, I always say turn your mess into a message.
Yeah.
It's important. You can do that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And whatever that message is, right? I mean, just because you've been through trauma doesn't mean you need to grab a microphone and get on stage in front of everybody, but even just just one other person, right? Exactly.
It's about one other person that you could help. If you could save one life, then that's all worth it.
What's that that cliche, when a candle lights another candle, doesn't lose any of its flame, right? Exactly. Or any of its brightness. And so there's a way to do it, just one person at a time as well. But your story has so much power, and we should all share our stories when we're ready and feel safe too. So thank you for feeling safe and sharing yours with us today, Desi. It means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a space to share it. And I hope that your listeners can benefit from it as well. I think, unfortunately, abuse and things like trauma aren't linear, and anybody can be affected. And so that's what I'm glad that you are welcoming conversations like this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And stay in touch with me. I know you said you're doing more speaking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I speak 80 college campuses a year. And so if that's something that I can help you provide your voice to more individuals, please let me know.
I would love that. I'm definitely trying to get out there more in that college community. So that would be awesome. I'll definitely be in touch.
Let's talk, homie. What a great start to what I hope is a really cool working relationship. Desi Garcia, thank you so much for coming into the diner today, my friend.
Thank you. It was so great. Thanks so much.
Hell yeah. Y'all, that was my time with Desi Garcia. What an incredible human being. What a journey. Hearing someone's story that is so different from your own is often hard to grapple with. And so there's a chance that maybe this one was hard to grapple for you. And that is okay. But it is still important that we believe them. Just like when individuals grow up differently from us because their race was different than us, their sexuality, their ableism, their abilities, right? Like, we have to listen to the stories and ask the questions, because assuming is easier than learning, but just because it's easier doesn't mean that it is right. And I'm grateful for Desi for being here and sharing us a little bit of how she turned her mess into her message, to use her own beautiful words. Thank you so much, Desi, for giving us those tips as well for how we can try to help individuals who may be going through something when we don't even know it. Y'all, I appreciate you coming through. This was a powerful episode. I was excited to share it with you. Until next time, keep punching small talk in the face by asking better questions. You all take care.